All right, fantasy NBA fans. I would consider this to be probably just my first update as it relates to the 2026-2027 season. And I wanted specifically to talk about this one team. I mentioned this on a end of season recap, which was a pretty long video, and I don't know how many people hung in there, but based upon its uniqueness, I felt like this was probably a good enough place to start my 2027 analysis, if you will. I don't know, updates, probably more like it. The way I kind of see doing this is let me show you what I did, and then if you decide to do something like this, then you'll have actionable information. You can go out and find all the analysis you need as far as cheat sheets and rankings and that sort of thing. But what I'm going to just do is tell you what the way I approach things and the way I did things in sort of a nuts and bolts kind of way. So this video will not be for everybody, but it may actually help some folks out. So number one, this is a Dynasty NBA team that is basically getting ready for the upcoming season, which will not start until October of 2026. So here we are in May. We've got a long way to go. So at the end of the season, 2025-2026 season, regular season, I guess I should say, because the playoffs are going on right now, we decided, or someone decided, to throw together an NBA auction league. So the PC availability of various screens and stuff are not really great for sleepers, so I'm going to be referring back to my phone, and then I'll just show you my spreadsheet that I made here. This is a 32 team league, so rather than do expansion, kind of draft kind of a thing where people take over other franchises and stuff, this was 32 teams, and everyone just started with $1,000 budget. I got to be honest with you, $1,000 is too much. If you're doing an auction, I strongly recommend 400 or so is about as far as you need to go. The problem is, as the timer comes down and people start bidding that $1 and resetting the 10 seconds, if you know what I mean, that can go on for kind of forever. And the people who are not involved in that, of course, are just sitting there waiting and watching. The people who are involved probably don't care too much. But if you've got a $400 budget and you're bidding that $1 at a time at the end, I just have a feeling it's probably going to go faster because each of those dollars is more valuable than if you have 1,000. So that would be my first bit of advice to you, is don't make your budget too high. Secondly, don't make your counters too long. We were doing like a 10-minute counter per player on this. And again, if you've got time, you want to invest in it, that's fine. I don't know really how you get 32 people, to get in at once. It's probably not a way to do it. So the nature of a 32 team league maybe lends itself to a longer timer so that people can check in, check out, check in, and so on. The other strange rule, and this is one of the reasons I want to do a separate video for this team, it was decided beforehand that you had to spend 70% of your cap. So out of 1,000 auction budget, you had to spend 700 in order to qualify for what they created in a bidding system for the rookie picks. Okay. And I'm going to get into some detail on that. And again, when I talk about nuts and bolts, man, this is hardcore. This is something, if you're not really interested in it, that's fine. Maybe just move on to the next thing for right now. But if you really want to hear, how this went, I found the idea kind of fascinating, and y'all know me. If it's different, if it's inventive and fun, then I'll definitely give it a shot. So here's the way I approached this. A lot of people decided they were going to bid exactly 700 and have exactly 300 left. You'll notice here I kept a little spreadsheet on how many people did that, and it was 7 teams. So then, of course, they had to come up with a tie-breaking system because several teams had accomplished this goal. The tie-breaking system they came up with was to look at each team's roster and figure out who had the highest or lowest average points per week based upon their starting lineup. Now, I did not go in and do the math on that. I'm just trusting that they figured it out. I can just tell you now, the way I approached this was not that. I just figured there would be more than one team out of 32 that would end up with $300 left. So what I decided to do was I was just going to bid on who I wanted. And then when I got below the $300 threshold, in other words, when I had spent more than $700 on the players I wanted, and if that was 2 players to 6 players, I didn't pay attention to that. I just paid attention to dollar amount. As soon as I hit that number, I was going to stop and just keep track of the money around me and figure out, okay, where do I think I'm going to land? So the way this worked out was I signed Darius Garland for 177. I signed Markkanen for 162. I signed Edie for 122 and Halliburton for 252. I was really targeting Con Canoopel. This was my first auction, so when I was trying to do my custom bidding, I ran out of time and I did not get Con Canoopel. He went for 260, just for the record. So I was a little upset about that, but then I ended up with Halliburton at 252, which I guess means I saved myself $8. So at least, because I think Canoopel was going to go higher. So whatever. Once I spent money on those 4 players, I was in the 287 range. Somebody can do the math here and figure it out. But I was in 287 as far as dollars left. You have to spend $1 per spot. So I was more at like the 280 mark as far as my max bid on a player, if that makes sense. So I stopped. Now it took me, I think, a couple of nights to get those 4 players. I watched a ton of players go before I ever even bid on anybody. I think Edie was the first one I bid on, and he just went too low in my opinion. So that was the first one. Garland, same thing. I felt like he just kind of went too low. Markkanen, I waited and waited and waited until he finally came up, and then a lot of people were shocked that he only went for 162. So I do feel like I got a pretty good bargain there. And then Halliburton, yes, no, maybe, who knows. So what I did was I created my roster side over here on my spreadsheet, and then I created my salary number over here on the right, and then I coded them green when they were done. What happened was when I finished in my mind bidding, I was around 15 or 16 in the available money left. So I was right about the middle of the pack. But as I watched and as people signed more people, I saw myself creeping up. And if you'll notice, I got all the way up to these 300 guys. And then I happened to notice something strange, or at least noteworthy, after that. All the teams that were below 300 kept distancing themselves from me. So nobody was doing what I was doing. People were either shooting for 300 or they were shooting for 0, and there was nobody in between. So you'll notice there's this Vampires is just the username. At one point they were like $4 or $5 behind me, but all of a sudden they started filling in their roster and they started putting some distance between themselves and me. And I ended up with like about $80 that I could play with and still not lose my ranking. So I started putting a little bit of money on McNeely. I think I started my bid on Powell at 5 and I got him. Same thing with Small at 3 and I got him. In fact, I even think Small might have been a FAAB acquisition. Kobe Sanders, I ended up having to bid a little extra on because somebody else wanted him. So, but it didn't change, and I knew I could do it because it didn't change my ranking. So as we started to wrap up, know that it took like we were on the 4th night or the 5th night or whatever, and people were getting tired of dealing with it. I got a little upset because I had been waiting to get my players, and they decided to end the auction before everybody had filled their roster. So I went out and I grabbed on the waiver wire, I grabbed Goodwin and Jones. Um, and I spent a lot of fab on them because that was who I was going to target before the auction ended. And I had the money to get them. And I took some heat for that. People were telling me, why you bidding so much? And it's like, because that's who I wanted in the auction, and the auction ended early. So I guess here's another bit of advice. Don't end your auction early. Shorten timers if you want to wrap it up. Do whatever you need to do as far as making things more efficient. But everyone should have a full roster when you're done. You shouldn't be. Some teams have 6, and some teams have 8, and some teams are full. So that was really my only gripe with the whole process there. So after the auction was over, I had a very good indication then of how much money I had left over, and it was 224, which ranked 8th in the hierarchy of money left from the auction. And we're supposed to use this money to bid on rookie draft picks. Okay. So here's what I did. I was in 8th place. I looked at the person behind me, and I basically bid $203 of my remaining money on the 8th draft pick. Now, which pick you bid on was important, because if you and somebody else tied on a pick and you lost that tiebreaker, then you fell all the way down to a pick where nobody had bid. So if I bid on the 1-1 and I, let's just say, tied with somebody at 203, and then the next available pick to be bid on is like the 112, I don't know, I would have fallen all the way to 12. So that actually worked in my favor, because in that point I'm like, okay, I don't have to worry about all these 300 guys. Now, the part that they could have done better was if they had noticed where they ranked and knew that they were going to lose the tiebreaker, however that was discovered, they could have actually bid on my pick at 8. In other words, maybe they bid on the 7, hoping nobody else bid on it, because they probably wouldn't have. And then they also could have maybe outbid me on my 8. Now, there was a okay, I got to pause there for a moment. I went and checked. The rule is specifically you could only bid on 1 first-round pick, and you could only bid on 1 second-round pick. So I knew there was a way I had mitigated this, and that was if someone wanted to bid on my pick, they were leaving their pick open for someone to fall into it, and they wouldn't have done that. So I pretty much knew going in that nobody would risk their pick in that top 7 by not bidding on it and bidding on mine instead. I just didn't see that as being the case. So all I had to do was I had to look at the person behind me at 202, and I could bid 203 on the 8th pick, and I would get it. And as it turned out, I did. So then I had $21 left over. And what I did was, and I maybe could have done a smidge better, I don't know, but I basically took my $21 and I bid on the 2-1, because I didn't know who would have money left over to bid on a specific second round pick. In other words, some of these guys maybe could have, I guess. In fact, this guy, I guess, if he would have just outbid me on the on the 7th pick, knowing there's no way I could beat him on that, and he was going to lose the tiebreakers anyway on all the rest of them, 1 through 6, then he could have bid, $70 on the 2-1. But I didn't know if he was doing that or not. So what I did was I put my $21 on the 2-1. Well, somebody outbid me. In fact, I can see if it was this guy or not on the 2-1. So then my bid slid until it got to a pick that somebody had not bid on. That turned out to be the 2-3. So based upon all of my strategic thinking here, I knew I was going to get the 1-8, and I was crossing my fingers I could get the 2-1, but as it turned out, I ended up with the 2-3. I feel like that's really, really good. Going into this with a brand new concept and not really understanding all of it necessarily, but at least formulating a way to do it, whereas I could have more known factors in my bidding process than unknown factors. And that's the way it worked out. So I was looking here at the second round, and Botnator ended up with the 2-1. So let's just go look at where Botnator is. Yeah, so it shows he had zero money left, and somehow he ended up with the 2-1. I just don't see how that's possible. And then Kingslayer, it says, here's a guy I could see him getting. Yeah, I could see him getting the 2-2 because he may have had more money bid on the 2-2 than I did. But I would actually ask them about the Botnator thing because there really should be no way for him to have the 2-1. You know what? Actually, I take that back. Yes, there is. There is a way for him to have the 2-1. Everyone got $50 added. And I think I forgot to add my $50 to my bids. I just now thought of that. So actually, I probably could have had the 2-1 had I done it correctly. I don't know. To me, this was fun to participate in. But if I was like the commissioner of it, if I was trying to run it, I would have probably lost my mind. I would have probably said no. There were a lot of people after the fact decided that they didn't like the way it was run and they left the league. But for what it's worth, there's enough people who have hung around that I think it's going to survive. So I ended up going for these 4 players that I wanted. And then if you'll notice with McNeely and Powell and Small and Sanders, Rupert, Penda, all those guys, I ended up going very young. Those were all rookies in the 25-26 season. And I feel like that money's going to pay off. I got them cheap. They're young. If just one of those guys turns into an all-star, man, I'm looking really, really nice. And then with Goodwin and Jones, Jones is a rookie, Goodwin is not, but I really just saw myself as trying to find the best sort of support players. I don't expect either of them to be awesome, but for the waiver wire, you pick up what you can pick up. I did make a trade in this league. Someone sent me Jordan Miller for Javon Small. I have Javon Small in a bunch of leagues, and I do think he's going to be really good. But I felt like I had him in enough leagues that I could probably afford to let him go in this one. If it works out for this guy that gave me Jordan Miller, then great. And if it doesn't, then so be it. But that was pretty much the way this ended up set up. So all that being said, again, I think it worked out about as well as it could have. I might have ended up with the 2-1 had I done my math correctly, because I forgot we got $50 more on this. So, and they didn't remind me, of course. They didn't tell me, hey, do you want to make sure you bid all your money? Because apparently I didn't. So anyway, this is an auction dynasty league, 32 team dynasty league on Sleeper. It is called Pay to Win Hoops, which is kind of catchy. And I hope throughout the 26-27 season, I'll be giving you updates on this. In addition to actually prior to the season telling you how I spent those draft picks. I've been offered many trades for the 1-8, and I have turned them all down. I've said, nope, the only way I'll trade that is if the pick is on and there's nobody there I want, which is very unlikely. I'll even just throw out now, A-Cuff is a guy I'm really looking at hard. I do not expect him to be there at 1-8. And then after that, I kind of don't know. So it's a little early. We are going to do the rookie draft, it looks like right after the NBA draft, which at this minute is about 51 days from now. So I would expect sometime this summer I'll be throwing a video together talking about that rookie draft and how it went. I think that covers it. And Sorry if that explanation was poor, but this was one of the more unique leagues I've ever really been a part of, and pretty excited that I get the 1-8 and the 2-3 in the first rookie draft for this, because that whoever I get at the 1-8, I intend to be a starter at whatever position they are at, and then if I can fill in my flexes, with just kind of whoever, I'll do that, and we'll just kind of see how this goes. So you guys stay safe out there, and I'll check back in with you at some point soon.